It's an exciting time because the last few days, the government has released the opportunity for people to get back to buying a home. And what an exciting opportunity I've got for you finding a little bit more about what's going on in the estate agency world today, because I've got the Chief Executive of the Guild of Property Professionals, Iain McKenzie. Iain, lovely to meet you. We're socially distancing correctly, aren't we?
You know. We are indeed, Malcolm. Yes, yeah. You're in the northeast and I'm in the south part of the UK. So yeah.
That's more than 2 meters, I believe. Yes. Okay.
Indeed,
so
yeah.
Tell me about yourself and the Guild.
I am an estate agent of many years, so 3 decades. Started as the tender age of 17 on the good old-fashioned YTS scheme, for those of you that remember the YTS scheme, and entered into a job that I literally fell in love with in the very first instance, because in my eyes, it was always the fourth emergency service. It was always helping people to move home, and I see it as a hobby as well as a job. So it's been my passion for 3 decades and counting.
Excellent. Right. Okay. So what's the vision of the Guild, and why is it important, the Guild, to the public?
Well, the Guild, we're trying to be the kite mark of trust, integrity and results, that the general public can see the kite mark of the Guild and actually know that there is an agent that is exclusive within their town that's been chosen by the Guild to represent the values of that organisation. The agent signs up to a strict code of conduct. We were, in fact, the first business in the sector that had a code of conduct, way before the Ombudsman actually did. And we give them training and guidance and tools to uphold those at any one time and to offer the best-in-class service to the customer. So, like I say, a kite mark of trust, integrity and results.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so we're just out of lockdown, or your particular industry is just out of lockdown. How has it affected Guild members? Would you need to, for example, check on their situation as part of your ongoing inspection?
Our philosophy when lockdown started was that we instantaneously upped the communication level to daily activity with our members. This is way back in March, on the 20th of March, and we started a Facebook Live at one sort of communication method that's been having up to 75 to 80% on every single day of our members watching it, or on catch up or live at the time, depending on what's convenient to them, and very much with the focus of looking after themselves, looking after the community, and looking after their customers. That was really the early part of the business, and we've been evolving that and developing that daily in preparation for the announcement that came out this week from government.
Yeah, I want to applaud you on that, by the way. Far too few, if that's correctly saying, people have communicated during this lockdown. They've just seemingly lost visibility, which is silly.
Quite remarkable. The humbling messages that we've had from our members that have said, the Guild have been unbelievable during this time. You're the fourth emergency service. We don't know what we would have done without you. Because through every aspect of their business, if we start about business, because people have got a business to run and they've got families to look after and food to put on the table. We started at day one, and I've got areas of expertise, but within my team, we've got fantastic areas of expertise. So on day one, we had our head of finance talking about how to protect your business financially.
Right.
We had our head of HR talking about furloughing and unfurloughing people and mindfulness, and we've been doing programs all through this sort of 7-8 week period, and giving checklists and guidelines, and then going to the next stage of development, which is arranging Zoom calls daily. I've got a regional team, a team of people, fantastic people that work with me that talk to our members. And we've been getting on Zoom calls with our members 3 or 4 times a day, 10, 20, 30 at a time, just talking through again the bits that we've been communicating on Facebook Live.
So important, and getting that right mindset and helping them through this time. So how will COVID-19 or coronavirus, or what we're calling this awful thing, have affected the market short term? I mean, I'm seeing news stories saying that buyers are expecting to pay 20% less. That might.
So there's 2 or 3 things in that. And it's not a straight answer. So if we go back to the beginning, the property market was locked down. So the government intended it to be locked down, and it was particularly efficient in its delivery mechanism.
Yeah.
So those people that in the early stages of lockdown, from the end of March onwards, that were contractually obliged to move, were able to move if there were no signs of COVID in the home that they were moving to, or anybody involved in the transaction. Anybody moving into an empty home also had the opportunity to do so. But
Yeah.
with the exception of that, and with the exception of any virtual activity, virtual viewings or virtual valuations, the property market froze. It just ceased. And so instruction levels, sales levels and completions were 90% down during that period, which is exactly as intended.
Yeah.
Coming out of that now, what we saw during that period is we saw an instant drop off in terms of activity on portals and web chats and all of those sorts of things in the initial stages. But quite exceptionally, during that period, with people furloughed at home with time, and as time has gone on, we've seen more and more people going online, visiting Rightmove and Zoopla and On the Market and other portals, inquiring about homes, to the point where about a week or so, 2 weeks before the release of the sector, lettings inquiries in particular were at an 18-month high. More people looking to rent than there were 18 months ago.
Yeah.
Buyer inquiries have got back to virtually the same level pre-lockdown. And so that would have been in government's thinking in terms of actually releasing it safely. And I'm a huge advocate of releasing back into the sector safely.
Yeah.
And also knowing that there were 453,000 home moves that were frozen, that were people that were wanting to move that couldn't because of the situation.
Right.
So the instantaneous response is that we will be, and we are seeing, a very sharp return to activity in the last 48 hours.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that continue, because we've possibly got the upcoming hits of a recession and possibly got the upcoming hit of Brexit. Do you think those two will affect the market?
Well, and going back to your previous question, actually, Malcolm, you said, what about, we're hearing this speculation of 20% reduction. The news is fantastic at creating a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily look at data. It plays on either opportunism or fear. And actually, the evidence that we're seeing is that neither is happening in the property sector at this stage. And I can only say at this stage because it's the only bit that we've actually got the data for.
Yeah.
Is that during lockdown, 93% of sales that were agreed before lockdown stayed in place during that period.
Right.
So estate agents got on the phone to the buyers and the sellers and said, Malcolm, you want to buy Ian's house. Are you still okay to buy it? We're pretty confident that the housing market is going to be okay. And Malcolm says, yes, I love that house. I still want to move there. So 93% of the time that actually happened. And Ian agreed to continue to sell to Malcolm. So there has been no sharp fall off. Of course, you will get some buyers that will chance their arm and say, I think the market's going to crash and blah, blah, blah. But there is zero, as we sit today, there's zero evidence of that other than speculation. Because quite the contrary, on the first day back, within the first 4 hours of activity post-lockdown, Rightmove reported via a news flash that within the first 4 hours of activity was already 45% higher than the previous day.
Wow. Yeah, yeah. So is some of that dependent upon the availability of mortgages at the right price?
Yes. There are some potential bumps in the road. So the potential bumps in the road are that surveyors would downvalue property, even if there was an agreed value, that the surveyor would downvalue it. And so the Guild spoke to the Ministry. We spoke to our contact at the Ministry of Housing and Central Local Government and relayed our fears where that was concerned. And they had, in fairness to them, they'd already spoken to RICS and said, what's your policy, RICS? And RICS's view was that so long as demand remained strong, that they saw no reason why down valuation should take place.
Yeah.
But they were concerned that if lending were to drop in terms of loan to values and multiples, then that would hamper demand because some people wouldn't be able to buy. And so we've lobbied lenders, and of course lenders will do what they have to do. They won't take influence necessarily from being lobbied in particular. But we have spoken to them and said, what are your intentions? And the feedback that we had a week or so ago was that they've got money. interest rates are notoriously low. They want to do business, they're prepared to do business, and so the vision and the hope is that loan to values, from a mortgage perspective, will go back to pre-lockdown levels.
Excellent.
I think both of those are potential bumps in the road, but at the moment, and again as we speak today, it's a promising sign.
Yeah, just for those who are listening, RICS is the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, is it correct?
That's correct, Malcolm. My apologies, I was using jargon.
Yeah, we all do, don't we? All jargon,
Yeah.
you know. So how does the Guild help in these times with buyers and sellers? How do your members show that extra professionalism at times like this? For example, training.
Training is critical. So we have trained, so via the Zoom calls, via the Facebook Lives, we've got something called the Knowledge Hub. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later on. We really have over communicated to our customers in the very early days. So at times like this, what was the first part of training? The first part of training was to grade your customers. So grade your customers by discretionary or non-discretionary needs. So do they want to sell or do they need to sell? And so really focus on the ones that need to sell at this time, because they're the people who need your help the most.
Yeah.
The second one was to overlay that was actually vulnerability and health risk of your customers. And so if you've got a person that needs to sell but they're high risk, well, then that customer really does need a good agent to look after them. And so we've implemented lots of preparation, virtual viewing tools, virtual valuation tools. So as a first screen of defense to protect those vulnerable people that need to sell, well, rather than letting 20 people around the house, actually let's do a virtual viewing. And the critical thing of that was communicating with our customers, telling them what the plans are. And subsequently, the feedback that our members have had from their customers is it's so great to see an agent that is actually thinking about us and looking after us, because there's people that are scared out there, you know. And the thing about housing that is counterintuitive almost to what's gone on with what we've experienced in the last 9 weeks is the government's first message was stay at home. And now the second message within 48 hours of stay alert is that you can now open up your home and let strangers in. And it's sort of counterintuitive, isn't it, if we think about it?
Yeah, my wife was telling me the joke that's going around on Facebook, saying, you know, I can't meet with my parents, but I can sell my house. So I put my house on sale. My parents have booked an appointment for next week.
I know it's bonkers from that side, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, and sorry for the expression, but it is. And in so doing, the agents really need to have a really strict guidelines as to how they're conducting viewings. And how they're protecting their staff, because we've got staff that have been furloughed that have basically been told to come back to work and go and show 20 houses a day.
Yeah.
They're going to be nervous and worried. And so you've got to be a really considered approach to that.
Yeah.
And so we worked on, at the Guild, probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, a 6-point plan for a safe return to work. So our Guild members were preparing for this for quite some time. And now there's been additional guidance from the government, which we've now got version 2 of our guide, because we'll update it. It's a live document, and it really is designed to help people back to business safely. It's critical in this time.
Yeah, I want to applaud you though on your approach to customer sensitivity, because sadly so many would be having to sell because of death, because of financial challenges and everything. And I think that is a really important message, and another big reason why people should get closely involved with an organization like yours, isn't it?
Yeah, and it is. So the messages that I said earlier, I don't know what we would have done without you. We have delivered. We've done all the heavy lifting for our members to make sure they can look after their colleagues and look after their customers. Yeah, they've got to go and do the doing.
All right, I'm with you. I want to delve a little bit further into something you just mentioned beforehand, which is the Guild's Knowledge Hub. So why is it important, and how is it beneficial to both members and the public?
Right. So the Knowledge Hub has got, and I haven't counted. I should have counted before this interview, Malcolm. So my apologies. Let's say 100 or 150 videos, video training contents in there in a myriad of different areas. So it's got compliance, it's got regulation, all the things that are boring, but to some people, but actually really, really necessary in terms of the Guild membership. We look to be compliant and follow regulations at all time. There's a whole section on customer care and customer expectation, because everyone talks about customer care and customer experience. Well, my view is that if you match their expectations, that's not great customer care. Proper customer care is exceeding expectation. So there's some training and guidance on that. There are sales techniques, because it's okay to influence people to make the right decisions. But it's a very robust platform. The bit that's really good about it is that Paul Offley, my compliance officer, sent this a few years ago to Trading Standards in Cambridgeshire, and said to Trading Standards, "What do you think of this training that we deliver?" And they were so pleased that they endorsed it. And so the Guild Associate Scheme has, if you take that and pass it, and it is an annual exam and qualification, means that you will be Trading Standards approved in the marketplace.
It's almost like a CPD, is it? Continuing Professional Development?
Yeah, yes. It is. Yes, it is the straight answer. It's a professional. It's not a formal qualification in government eyes, but in Trading Standards eyes, it is at such a quality that they've able to endorse it.
Yeah, I like the fact that you say that you offer sellers a cohesive approach to marketing. Tell me what that is, as it's often a grumble by sellers that the estate agency's done very little to promote the property, apart from putting a sign up that promotes more of the estate agent than the property.
Yeah, but I think that's increasingly going to become more of an issue. But you're absolutely right, Malcolm. So the general public believe that the portals sell the properties, and that the conveyancers do the conveyance process, and that estate agents, all they do is measure up and take some photographs and stick it on the portals.
Right.
Our belief is that every home should have a different marketing strategy, because you've got to promote it in the right way and look at the points that are specific to that property, and maximize the appeal to the type of person that's going to buy it. So we call it the demographic profile of the buyer, but that's the posh words. There's a type of person that's going to buy every home, and so we market them in sort of cohesion with that. So it's a multi-channeled approach. So it isn't just putting it onto a portal, onto a website, and waiting for the phone to ring or for emails to come through. It's thinking about different strategies. So we would think about the visuals in terms of what photographs we take, what video content we take. We've got digital magazines that we send out to our customer base. We've got traditional magazines that we leave in the top end, or in the old world, but again in the new world, hopefully soon, in the doctor's surgery and all those sorts of things, magazines. We're not doing that now. We're not producing magazines at this time. We're producing them digitally only at this time, safer. We've got Facebook channels where we're looking at Facebook buyer boosts, and so going to people that are looking via Facebook. We've got a myriad of different channels of activity that the guild agents can choose and select that are best and appropriate for the house that they're marketing at that time.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? It's almost like we've been experimenting with TikTok, which is for the younger generation, supposedly music. But actually, we've had a huge amount want to get onto our entrepreneur courses, because they say, it's 20 or 30-year-olds that we're collecting there. So it's matching the channel to the property as well, I suppose.
It really is, and it is like I say about the demographic of. So a home at £1 million will have a different buyer to a flat at 69950 in the northeast. So it's just understanding the type of person that's going to buy that property and marketing it appropriately. Facebook is becoming pretty massive these days. In terms of marketing channels and exposure, it's got to be appropriate. Community, joining in with the community is particularly important in a non-salesy way. That's actually one of the things I should have mentioned earlier about during the lockdown. We've really encouraged in the early stages, and then didn't have to encourage at all, the guild members to get into their communities and help out, because a high street estate agent is fundamental to the community that they're working within.
Yes, and I suppose a great amount of their success lies in people's word of mouth, recommendations.
Yeah, huge, absolutely huge. The communities won't forget businesses in all sectors that have helped and supported during this time. I really do believe that. So
how do you see the property market going in the next 5 years? More private rentals? You just talked about the growth in rentals beforehand. Will buy to let come back? Do we face negative equity? I know I'm asking you to have a magic a ball
Yeah.
and everything like that, but come on, just tell me what you think.
Well, a wise man once told me that if you want to predict the future, look to the past.
Yeah.
And that's not right in every instance. In 95% of the time, it's right. 5%, of course, it's not right. So if we were to look at the past, what we would note is that and if we were to turn the housing market into a graph, and it was a big graph over years, it would show an increase, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But of course, there's peaks and troughs. I've been in this market in the 80s, 90s, and noughties, and so I've seen peaks and troughs. And of course, there's huge regional variances. Of course, there are huge regional variances. I know them very well. But in general terms, the housing market has always proven to be remarkably stable and remarkably resilient. So during the whole Brexit period, we saw a realignment of prices in London and the southeast, but throughout the UK, there was actually positive growth during that period, particularly Northern Ireland, interestingly, which was the highest growing area for 2 years consecutively. So in the long term, in the macro, I do see that the housing market will remain very stable. The government have already accepted that there will be lifelong renters. Statistically, if you haven't bought a home by the time that you're 40, you're less likely to ever buy a home. That's one of the stats that the government announces. And so they have been moving away from the private rental sector in terms of landlords, private landlords, and moving towards a more corporate entity.
Right.
Because of the fact that they do see that people will rent for a long time. And so, that's okay. We as a guild, we work very heavily in terms of relationships with our tenants and making sure that they have the right to a peaceful life and all those sorts of things. So it is possible that and probable that there will be a continued increase in the lettings curve. The one thing that I would say is that the UK has always been a home owning society.
Yeah.
If you look at Europe,
compared to Germany.
Compared to Germany, everyone compares it to Germany, don't they?
Yeah.
Germany is more of a rentals perspective.
Yeah.
If you take a British person's home is their castle philosophy, home owning is the bedrock of the society. And if you're to do a survey, I think most people would rather buy than they would rent.
Yeah.
There are differences around age and work and migration and all that sort of thing, but that might be one of the things that comes out of this COVID-19 is that the world has moved a decade in 7 weeks in terms of communication. Here we are now, Malcolm, at two ends of the country. 4 months ago, we would have been face to face in the studio somewhere.
Yes, correct.
So I think that because home ownership is cheaper the further you move away from London and the southeast, I think home ownership will actually rebound back in many ways.
Excellent. Okay, I want to talk about disruption in the market through technology, because obviously virtual viewing must have really caught on. I mean, next week I'm interviewing a CEO of a telemedicine company based in Estonia, but really working through all the doctors across the UK who suddenly saying, "Hey, I like this better than having to doing the teleview." Has virtual viewing really taken off? And what other disruption do you see coming through technology? Because you seem to be at the Guild leading it a lot with the Knowledge Hub and so on. Yeah,
I don't see disruption, interestingly. I see it as being a complementary asset.
Yeah. Okay.
I really, really do. So 33 years ago, the boss on my first day said to me, he said, "Iain, remember these words. The state agency is 99% people and 1% houses."
Yeah.
And in those days, it was paper-based and it was telephone-based and it was the newspapers. And then something called a fax machine came in, and we were reveling in the fax machine. And then computers came in, and then I won't go through the last 30 years. It would be boring. But at each stage, there's been enhancements in communication, and yet the job is still the same. It's about talking to people and helping them. And great agents are the fourth emergency service. They help people when they need to move, and they offer advice and guidance that moves them from A to B in the most appropriate way to match their needs. It's not the fastest or the slowest or the best price or the worst price. It is all of those, but it's not specifically all of those. It's in accordance with the needs of the customer.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at it in today's world, I think that the technology that we've got will aid with communication. We can help people move safely, and that's really COVID safe at the moment. It has to be the most critical thing.
Yeah.
We delivered a survey, or conducted a survey, I should say, in the last month that says that 56% of people are very happy to conduct virtual viewings and virtual valuations. From a lettings perspective, in the last 9 weeks, people have viewed properties virtually and then let that property, agree to take it. From a sales perspective, we've had lots of virtual viewings that have taken place, but what they're saying is, I'd like to go and see it before I commit, because they just want that safety of having felt and seen the property. And one of the things that the government guideline starts off with, and it's all the way through the guidelines that's issued this week, is visit a property only when you're prepared to make an offer. Consider it virtually first of all. Only conduct a valuation if you need to do it face to face. Consider a virtual valuation hitherto, and it is absolutely all the way through. And I think it will be part of the future agency. Is that for environmental reasons as well? Just jumping in a car and driving to Devon because you want to go and view a house. You don't need to do that. You can stay in Portsmouth and look at it from your home in Portsmouth or Winchester or wherever it is that you are.
Yeah.
So
My daughter's Go on, carry on.
Go on, sorry. I was going to say, so technology for me is an enhancer in communication, and it is definitely not a disruptor.
Excellent. Yeah. My daughter's coming back from a stint of her and her husband in Poland. 3 years they've been working out there, and obviously they're going to be buying near York, and they had a weekend to come and visit, and they filtered out by using virtual, filtered it out. Yeah.
And that's exactly how it should be done for them, for the sellers, and for the estate agent. At this time, keeping everybody safe and going to see the home that and then following strict guidelines when you do that viewing. We've got really strict guidelines and a 6-point plan, and all those sorts of things have been rolled out. Virtual, that's exactly the right way to do it, Malcolm, definitely.
Otherwise you get house blindness, don't you?
Can happen. You forget which bathroom is in which house and all those sorts of things.
Yes, I had a client called Hog the Builder in York, and people would come up from London to look around York and try and do 30, 40 houses in a weekend, and then get back and ring up Hog and say, are you the one that had the brown and white collie in the showroom?
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? The little things that you pick up in the homes that actually aren't necessarily the living room or whatever. It's
Okay. Iain, I want to talk to you now, please, if I can, about your tremendous experience as an MD and a CEO. How do you think leadership has changed over the last 10 plus years, and how do you see it changing in the next 10?
Wow, it's a big question, isn't it? So I would say that leadership 10 years ago was management. And it was, if you were a nice person, it was pushing people forward. And if you weren't a nice manager, it was the knee in the back methodology of telling people to do things. It was, I say jump and you say how high. That was sort of the philosophy with many companies. That's never been leadership. The companies that are successful today are the ones that adopted the mainstream style of leadership 10 years ago, which was, it's about, first of all, if I were running a large organization in today's world, I'd ban the word management. I wouldn't want any managers. I'd only want leaders. I'd want team leaders and department leaders, because I'd want people that were showing people how to do it properly and coming up with the vision, but allowing people to thrive and develop and be better than their boss within the job roles that they've got. So leadership is about creating, for me, and the way that I do it is, if I have an idea, I sensor check it with my team. I then open it up and I set team guidelines and team rules where we say, guys, you know as much as I do, you go off and tell me what you think it should be, and then feed back to me your vision, and then I've got my vision already. I already know what it is, but I want to know what your vision is. And then you overlay the two and come up with the best version of the first iteration in the first place.
Brilliant. Yeah. So what are your personal 3 top tips for keeping people motivated? And I'm saying that in the context of today, not as in the old today, you know.
Yeah, okay, as in today. For me, it's always been, and I would hope that if you were to ask anybody that's ever worked with me, that they would say what I'm about to say is true, is that I really want to understand the person I'm working with, and not just on a superficial level, and not in an intrusive capacity, but the right measure between, I really want to understand the person I'm working with, what they feel their strengths and weaknesses are, what their needs are, what their background is. And the more you have a relationship, the more trust builds. And so I think trust is fundamentally important in terms of being able to motivate people. It has to be from the bedrock of trust. Because there's an element of trust in terms of motivation where you need to sometimes praise and sometimes critique. So I would say that understanding the individual is crucially important. I've got something that I call the 40% rule, is that if I see a person doing something well and I don't praise them, they will only ever do it to that level, or it will slip from that point. Right. So whenever I see a person doing well, I praise in public, and I will say, right, can everybody stop there? I've just seen Dan doing this. Dan, can you just share with everybody how you've done that? And so that's just one of the techniques. The other bit that sits over the top of trust is that if ever there's a person not doing things well, I think you also have to challenge that. Mm-hmm. Because, this is just part of the motivational piece, is that if you see something being delivered poorly and you don't challenge it, the behavior is going to be that it's just going to get worse, because it becomes acceptable to that person. They didn't pick me up on it, so it must be okay.
Surely the others must then think, I can get away with it as well.
Of course. But as a leader, you say, hang on a second, Fiona, I've just seen you do that. That's not really, let's just talk about this, can we? And you don't do that in public. It's always done in the appropriate environment. But praising good behavior and challenging poor behavior, I think, adds motivation. And then it's reward. And it is about reward, but it's not necessarily financial rewards. It's about rewarding in the right way, and ways that are appropriate to the person. We've all got little trips. And I guess the last one would be just saying thank you from time to time, really genuinely saying thank you.
Yes.
It's so easy to do.
Simple.
It really is. And saying thank you in lots of different ways. So, I mean, there's no rocket science with that, but a relationship based on trust. And there is one other thing to I once went on a training course where it was the psychology of having big conversations, and there were cameras in the room, and there were psychologists sat in the corner that are analysing behaviour. And the feedback that I was given at the end of that course, it was a 3-day course. It was quite intense. And the feedback was, Iain, you don't seem to have a problem with a big conversation. And my response was, that's because they don't exist. There is no such thing as a big conversation. There's just actually communicating the truth.
Yeah.
And it's fundamentally just part of my being, is that I just believe that to be the case.
Simple, yeah. Look, successful people like you, and I'm really inspired by you. They usually have a personal success belief, or even a mantra that stood them in good stead over the years. Have you got one?
I'll share with you my New Year's resolution, which I don't share with many people, and there I am sharing it with quite a few. But it is every single New Year, my resolution is to be true to myself. Yeah, that's literally that is my. So in the word integrity for me is really, really important. Yeah. Because personal integrity is about honesty with yourself. Mm-hmm. I don't mind if I do things well or if I do things badly, so long as I recognise from those points and learn from it. And I just think that personal integrity is fundamentally important to me as a person. I think that honesty is a really crucial part. So I'll give you an example. I've been an estate agent for 34 years. I have never bought a second home, ever. Mm-hmm. And that's not true. That isn't true, Malcolm. I own a share in a very small but very cute little place in the Three Valleys where I go skiing.
Right, I'm with you.
So myself and 3 friends put some money into a pot, and we bought a little place near St Martin de Belleville.
Right.
but other than that, I've never bought a second home because I don't believe as an agent that I could justify going to somebody's home and valuing it and then possibly be interested in buying it. It didn't sit with my personal values. And I've got nothing to say about people that have. That's their choice. I'm just delivering my view on that.
Yeah.
So it's just personal integrity and understanding who you are. And I guess the last bit is that I am a little bit of a rhythms and routine junkie. In that I plan things. I think about what it is I'm looking to achieve. I then work backwards from that. So start with the why and work backwards. And then I set up a rhythm and routine and checking mechanisms to enable me to deliver that. Right. And sometimes it's a godsend and other times it's a challenge because I end up making myself so super busy that because my rhythms and routines are so ingrained into the business that you do need to press pause at times just for your own well-being.
I resonate to that because one of mine is reliability. I'm obsessed about it. If I've got to get up at 2:00 in the morning to drive to a customer, I'll do that, or fly or whatever it may be. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Reliability, that's the thing. Yeah. Okay. So can I ask you, what are your 3 top tips in how to spot good future management people? I know you the word management. Yeah. Or good future leaders then. Yeah. Future leaders then. Yes. What are your 3 top tips in spotting them?
First thing is to get to know them. So that will be the bedrock that will actually sit beneath everything and over the top of everything that I do. Is really get to know the person. Top tips. The second tip was just because they're good at the job, don't assume that they want to manage people or lead people because maybe they're perfectly happy not doing so. It isn't always the best sales person in the world that I'm in that ends up being the best manager. Yeah. That's also critical because sometimes people let ego get in their way, don't they? For me, it's about if they can demonstrate that they are trustworthy, honest with themselves. It is the same things, the philosophies I have really. It's an honesty with themselves. Self-learner, hugely important to me. If is a person that self-learns, it doesn't matter if something goes well or something goes poorly, you learn as a consequence of it. So that they're self-analytical from that perspective. If they can demonstrate that to me over a given period, that's important. And the last one would be loyalty, actually. It's loyalty to their team. Yeah. I'm not really interested in people that help others for their own self-promotion. I'm more interested in people that help people because it's the right thing to do.
Excellent.
And I actually think that they end up making the best leaders and the best managers. And the last one is, in the world that we're in today, they have to be empathetic and approachable. I think in the world that we're in today, I think that's probably more crucial than anything else because nobody really knows what's going on in other people's homes, in their heads, or in the environment, in their spheres of influence. I think people need
sensitivity.
Really, really sensitive and empathetic.
Yeah. Excellent, thanks. Listen, Iain, I've thoroughly enjoyed our chat. Now, just before we sign off, I think it's important that we tell people that are listening and viewing the reasons why they should select a guild member if they're going to be buying the house. Now, I know they can go, oops, that side, isn't it? Yeah, they can go to the URL that I put up on the screen here to find a member. But let's just remind them the value in selecting a guild member.
So the guild, so we work an exclusivity model. There is one agent per town or location, a bit different in London and the major cities, but there's one agent per town or location. They've been chosen not necessarily because they're the biggest or the best, or that they've got the most houses to buy or to rent, but because they have the right values as a company in terms of putting customer care first, and looking after their staff and looking after their customers. The way that we manage and regulate that is that we ask them to sign a code of conduct on entry, which they can be removed from the guild at any one time if they're not following the code of conduct. We have a very strict compliance department. We are checking them from a compliance perspective, so anti-money laundering and all of the things that they need to do. Yeah. We're regularly training and developing them from that side. and it's a open training platform where they've got access to it. All of their staff go through it. We have the associate scheme, which is trading standards accredited, so that there is a standard of performance that all customer facing staff need to adhere to and follow. And the last one is that if something were to go wrong, and things do go wrong, is that they have to be part of a redress scheme, so the ombudsman. And there's also access in through the Guild website that you've seen there, is that if there is a disagreement with the agent, we do have a complaints procedure that if in the worst case scenario, that would go through and they come directly to me and Paul Offley, my compliance officer. So we will investigate any claims, disagreements, accusations, whatever they may be, if there is anything that were to go wrong. But we really try to select the most appropriate agent per town, and then we continually, and it is a continual training and development of that agent.
Brilliant. Iain McKenzie, CEO of the Guild of Property Professionals, thank you so much for your very, very frank interview. And it's at the right time, isn't it? We've just hit the right time in news times.
Thank you so very much. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you.